We are covering this from every angle with our political reporters. No one needs to sleep. We are live. Here with me, CNN correspondent Sunlen Zerfati, Brian Stelter, CNN senior media correspondent and host of Reliable Sources, and Julian Zelizer, a historian and a professor at Princeton University. Also in Washington, D.C., Laura Coates, CNN legal analyst and a former federal prosecutor. And in California, Lonnie Chen, CNN political commentator and the former public policy director for Mitt Romney. He is not supporting Donald Trump, though he is a Republican. Guys, thank you for being here. And Laura, let me begin with you. The FBI once again says case closed with Clinton unless any new devices are found or more emails. You say this is not the end, that the Comey letter is not the end of this issue for Hillary Clinton. Why not?
No, it's not. And the reason what you just stated, what Comey has done is set a very odd precedent here. By inserting himself into kind of the political hemisphere, what he's done is say, I'm going to continue to update Congress if there's anything that may be even tangentially related to what I testified about on the Hill. And so there is a conceivable number of devices that may still be found with her aides in various degrees. And so it may actually be a case, this is a redundant issue that may continue to come up again and again. And frankly, it's something that has been capitalized by by Donald Trump, and with good reason, because it presents to the American public that there's going to be a shadow of perhaps much more to come if she actually is president. And so this is what one of the failures of, I think, Comey in this case is that when he did this, it's an irreversible error here, because now it will continue to haunt this campaign through the inauguration if she's elected.
And perhaps beyond, right? I mean,
yes.
Again, if new devices are found, et cetera. Sunlen, we know that the Clinton camp believes this has hurt them. To what extent, we're not going to know until, Wednesday morning, late Tuesday night. But their internal polling showed it hurt them. This letter Comey sent 9 days ago among independents and some Republicans who had fled Trump and come over to her. Why is she making the choice not to address this head on the stump? I mean, this is good news for her. She didn't talk about it tonight. She's not going to talk about it much tomorrow. Why?
Right. This was a calculation from within the Clinton campaign. First, of course, there is relief that this is good news for them. But in essence, they don't want to draw more attention to it by having Clinton come out and talk about it, come out at her rallies. Certainly, that was a discussion within the Clinton campaign over the last many hours. But yes, she's not addressing it. They want to make sure that her closing message is a positive one, a message that she controls, not about the FBI. So much over the last 10 days has, for her, largely been dictated by this Comey letter that really has sucked up so much of the oxygen. And yes, the Clinton campaign believes that this has cost them votes. They think even now, it's a wound that really can't be healed in these last few days of the campaign. And that's why we're not seeing Secretary Clinton really put a spotlight on it once again.
Brian, we'll never forget Michelle Obama saying, when they go low, we go high. And that is something that sort of the Clinton campaign as a whole has embraced. However, it's just not what we're really seeing, is it, in the final days?
No, it's not. I mean, both these candidates are trying to have it both ways by having positive messages, sharing positive themes, but mostly engaging in negative campaigning, mostly running negative TV ads. And I think even though this email development, probably the most important development of the weekend, the big unanswered question, the big story even after Election Day is going to be what was going on inside the FBI and what is still going on inside the FBI? How much of a rebellion is there right now? Will there continue to be after Election Day? I think of this as being a milepost in that story, but there's a lot more we don't know about what's really going on inside the FBI right now.
And Julian, you've written about this, and you say there's, exactly to Brian's point, there's just perhaps, though, not much of an appetite within Congress to take on the FBI ever since the days of, J. Edgar Hoover.
Yeah, right. Politicians are always reluctant to take on the FBI because they don't want the FBI to go back against them. That's J. Edgar Hoover always threatened politicians who tried to intimidate him. And at the same time, it's not clear that Republicans would go after the FBI if they control Congress. So the question is, would a Democratic Senate do something? I think Senator Franken has already raised the question of the need to look into this agency more closely. But I don't know if that will happen.
We did hear calls for a leak investigation, trying to figure out
Right.
where all these leaks are coming from inside the FBI.
Right, with Rudy Giuliani saying, you know, in the morning on Friday, oh, well, you know, I've heard this, and then saying later to Wolf, well, no, actually, it was former FBI agents.
I mean, that's the book that I'd like to read now at the end of this election, is what happened inside the FBI, what agents were taking what positions, because it seems that there's a lot of mystery there still.
Lonnie Chen, to you, regardless of who wins, whether it is Trump or Clinton, I think it's hard to dispute the argument that there's been a fracturing of your party, of the Republican Party. And the question is, to what extent is it lasting? What do you want to see your party do come Wednesday morning?
I think part of it, Poppy, depends obviously on whether Trump wins or loses. I think if Trump wins, it's going to be very difficult for those who opposed him to continue as part of the same party, or certainly the same party as presently constituted. I think if Trump loses, it'll be an interesting question. I do think that there is room in the Republican Party for all the different elements we saw in this election, not the least of which is maybe some rethinking around issues like trade, where Donald Trump did have a message that was resonating with a lot of people. Maybe not fundamentally becoming an anti-free trade party, but thinking more thoughtfully, for example, about how to deal with those that have been displaced by the effects of trade. So I think these are some of the things that we'll see starting Wednesday morning. But I would hope if Trump loses, that enough Republicans can come together to say, look, there's a party here worth saving, rather than going off and trying to start something new, which I just don't think would be entirely productive. I
do think, you know, there is, Brian and Sunland, to both of you, because you cover different aspects of this, you know, there is it is very much an important reality for us to talk about. The people, the millions of people that have felt left behind in this economy, in this country, for far too long. And even if you disagree with Donald Trump, even if you despise some of the things that he said, he has been their voice, Brian.
I've been interviewing.
So who's their voice after him if he doesn't win?
I've been interviewing a lot of the Trump campaign beat reporters anonymously. I want to get their real candid assessment of what they've been through the past year. And all of them have said, I didn't know what was happening in these states, in these communities, in the specific areas, these overlooked voters. I think, Sunland, you saw that firsthand early on in the primaries.
Yeah, I mean, when talking to Trump supporters, really trying to tap in, why do you support this man? There is a sense that he gives them a voice and that they haven't had that in a really long time. I can't tell you the amount of Trump supporters I've talked to that said that they haven't been involved in elections past, but that they really felt like this time they have a stake in it because they feel they have a horse in the game.
So that goes, Julian, to the question of, is there the secret Trump voter?
Well, I'm not sure there is. I think most Trump voters have now been pretty vocal, and many pollsters are saying there's not going to be a surprise that way. You might see some of that in a Pennsylvania or Michigan, but I'm not convinced.
That might be all you need, though.
Yeah, I mean, but on the other question, I always think of Barry Goldwater was a right-wing Republican. He gets killed in 1964, goes poorly, and then Ronald Reagan will come onto the scene in 1976 with a more polished look, a more charismatic look, and a little bit cleaner look. And he'll be president in 1980. And so that's one thing that can happen. If Donald Trump is done, but someone continues with his message in a more politically astute way.
Quickly, before I go, Laura Coates, to you, regardless of who wins, does Director Comey stay and serve until, he can serve until 2023?
Yeah, he certainly has a tenure that's intended to outlast, you know, the political sphere. And the reason for that is we want to make sure that the FBI remains apolitical. But I think the trend that he started to try to make it more, you know, inevitably a political organization is going to kind of signal his demise. When he raised the red flag 10 days before and lowered it 2 days before the election, it just really undermined his integrity and the FBI in general.
I'd read that book, the book that he writes after this. Thank you guys, Laura, Sunland, Brian, Julian, Lonnie. Thanks for being up with me at 2:11 a.m. You are troopers.